everybody to our Dental Survival webinar series. And I have Larry Guzzardo, also Dental Academy's Head Instructor. I have Robyn Reis, VP of Coaching for Also Dental Academy, HR Specialist, Eric Vickery, Coach for Also Dental Academy, KPI Performance Specialist. And today I want to shift gears a little bit because we've been spending a lot of time on the financial and specific HR in terms of unemployment, loans, and all that. If there's any things that are unclear, we can maybe assign that for later. But today's topic is I want to talk about supporting your team's success. And I want to look at what should we be doing with our team if we aren't already doing that, to make sure we're constantly communicating, to make sure that we are training. Because what I like to do in this session is focus more broadly on that. I'll even spend some time. I want to do a short tour, 5 minutes of, because we have a lot of all-star members on the call, and I just want to point out some things. And even if you're not a member at All-Star, you can just see the idea of how online training can work. And I can just show you kind of the training protocol, what I'm recommending during this time, and what I'm recommending when you're actually doing, you're back in the office and going. Some states are going to be reopening and doing it earlier than others. And so, this could be, it's fluctuating. But this week more broad. Next week, we'll talk more about specific verbiage in terms of how to, with patients, in terms of making sure that we're prepared for different things as well. So that's something we will move into. So I just want to hear from each one of you in terms of what should dentists be, what they should have been doing with their team, what should they be doing now with their team and going forward. And let's start with, we'll do Eric, Robyn, Larry.
Okay. Hear me okay?
I hear you.
All right. Should is a tough word. You got to be careful how you pronounce that when you tell people what they should be doing. But, I think teams, are they wanting to get together? I did a team meeting by Zoom on Monday with a team in San Jose, and they were ecstatic to see each other. They hadn't seen each other in a month. And so it was really great for them to see each other. So first of all, I think it's great to continue to build your relationships in your family with your team by seeing each other. My format the last half of April has been preparing to relaunch and in an effective way. So, as a dentist over here, you know how to spend your money when you get back and making sure that you're appropriately, spending your PPP money and keeping people on unemployment that should be on unemployment and taking people off that should be coming in. And then the second tier is knowing your OSHA and PPEs, because when it all boils down to it, the perception of how safe your team feels to come in is going to be more important than what the CDC recommends or interim suggestions from the ADA. So are they feeling safe enough to come in? And if whatever that is, you need to determine that as a team, come up with what your safety precautions are going to be. And then once the team feels safe, they should then be able to convey to a patient how safe it is for the patients to come into practice, and then look at how your universal precautions are going to be changed when they come in. That's going to then dictate how your schedule is going to look. And so the third prong is now supercharged ideal day scheduling, right? So how you're going to make up some time without risking people's cross-contamination. Obviously, you can't be double booking and stacking patients on top of each other in a waiting room. That's not going to work. And so once you figure out those first two things, then it leads to, okay, what's our schedule going to look like when we get back? And I think you're going to have some people that really want to get in the office, and there's going to be some patients who are still a bit hands-off. They're still waiting to see how the dust settles. And so let's as a team be 100% clear on our verbal skills. On, first of all, we feel safe. How do we convey that to the patient? And then your communication starts to pour out that way, whether it's through a text messaging service or through your phone calls with the patients, or once they're coming into your practice. So then we have a before the patient comes in protocol, once they're in the office protocol, and then how the schedule looks.
Excellent. Robyn?
Oh, I'm next. Okay. Ditto on what Eric said. And my perspective, of course, is just a wee bit different, because I'm looking at it from a terms of not only the safety, but also the policies, protocols, employment issues. Now is a great time. I'm having a lot of conversations about doctors who don't have certain right criteria in place. They feel woefully unprepared for a lot of this, putting aside just what the ADA, CDC, WHO are saying as far as protections. We also have to look at it from an employment standpoint on what does this now mean when we're all, quote unquote, coming back together. So now is a great time for you dentists who don't have any type of policies in place that address these types of concerns, conditions, situations. Get those resources and get an employee manual and make sure that you are protecting yourself and your practice and your team members, and make sure you're doing it properly. Also going hand in hand with that is, you're probably going to experience a lot of questions, concerns, fear from your team members of, do I feel safe? And if I don't, why not? What does that mean for me as a team member? Do I still have a job? Do I not have a job? Do I still stay on unemployment? Do I not get on unemployment? And then if my doctor brings me back, do I qualify for the paid sick leave and the new expanded FMLA and, all of those things. So from a practice standpoint, what Eric mentioned, absolutely, I agree 100% with all of that. And behind the scenes, doctors, you also have to take care of the necessary paperwork, follow the rules, make sure those policies are in place.
Yeah, like Robyn, you always say that because of the situation, you can't just throw traditional HR rules out the window. You still have to be doing it. And I think that for the last 4 weeks, it's been sort of panic mode, getting a little better in terms of what do we do. And just so impressed with all of you and the great content that you put out. I didn't know you were all experts on this, but you made yourself experts on this, and it was very, very helpful. We got some amazing feedback on that. Now what I'm excited about is we're starting to begin this conversation of, now that we get to settle in, how are we, so I mentioned this with our members yesterday, is this Stephen Covey concept of you do obviously urgent and important, you want to do first, right? But where you grow your business is where you have lasting change, and you focus on the important, not urgent. So is it urgent to train your team? Is it urgent to do the HR manual? No, right? But it's important, because for many of you, most of the country, you're going to still have some time before you get back. And even those that states are opening, there are still going to be dentists and mayors that are still going to be unsure. And what if ends up this is going to be we're kind of learning as we go. They might open up things and close things. So we have to be prepared for that flexibility. But in so doing, with this uncertainty, we still have to have that lifeline with the team. We still have to create continuity for them. And what we've always been saying with All-Star training is you're doing 20 minutes a week. Now that's certainly if you're working. If not, I'll show you can do more. But the point is now's a good time to do those important but not urgent. Doing the training, looking at your policy manual and some of those situations, okay, because you have that time. So that's kind of what I'm hearing and why I'm excited that we start beginning this discussion, because I believe these are the big wins of growth and stability. Because I said from the very beginning, I kept saying this, and I know we have to talk about PPP, P3, whatever, PPE, all these things.
Triple P.
But I'm telling you that this is the elephant in the room, meaning that you wanted to done this well, because as Robyn can attest, if you are losing out on team members because you didn't lead them well, and then now what's going to happen is you're not leading. You have to lead in terms of giving them confidence it's safe, and then that to the patients it's safe. You got to do a good job at this. And create this strong family tie. Otherwise, they're going to leave, or it's going to be a weird work environment. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking. So Larry, now that you kind of heard, I wanted to put you last because you kind of bring it all together. This idea of what we're doing with our team. So Eric started our discussion. Robyn has HR elements, so I want to hear from you.
Well, we're figuring it out every day. Here in Georgia, we can go bowling, and we can get our hair cut again. We can go and do that. And some restaurants are open, and but we can't go to the dentist yet. So, but we can go to bowling alleys and restaurants and hair salons. Oh, and your gym is going to be reopening.
Get a tattoo, Larry. You can get a tattoo.
Yeah. So, but I can't go to the dentist yet. But I do have to say that I'm glad
nice
that
hair and bad teeth.
we all think alike. That we all think alike, because I think the team is your number one issue here. And if you haven't been in regular contact with your team, now's the time to start doing it. And if you haven't had regular contact on a formal basis, meaning mandatory, we're having a meeting and you need to attend and you're getting paid for it kind of meeting. You know what I mean? Now's the time to start doing things like that, where it's because we're going to do some training now. And we're going to start talking about the way that we're going to reopen the practice. So I think Eric makes a really, really good point when he says that the perception of how safe they are and how they feel about all of it, I do agree is very, very important. A lot of stuff has been going on, and the stuff that I read in social media is like scary, and it makes me think that people have completely forgotten about the fact that a dental office is a very safe place. It's not only a safe place to come, it's also one of the safest places to work, because there's very, very low incidences of people getting hurt on the job in a dental practice. But it's almost as if though people forgot about all the protections that we did. And so all the more reason why we've got to get our team included in this reopening. And I think just talking about, hey, what are we going to be doing? How do you feel about doing these things? How does it, ask them, make them walk through it. Like, how is it going to change your job? How does it change the way that you're going to greet a patient? How does it change the way that we're going to dismiss them? Think of all the aspects of your job, but get the team together and say, let's talk about this. Let's review what we've always been doing. And then let's review what we're going to start doing. And then let's talk about what's going to be different, so that we're prepared, because we're going to get those questions. And we have to remember that sometimes patients say things like, I've heard about people catching viruses when they come to an office. Will I catch a virus in your office? And so a lot of times when people say things like that, there is a hidden question there. It seems obvious for you to say, no, you won't get an, what I mean? You're not going to catch a virus here, but that's really not what they're asking. And so we don't want to let all of our verbal skills go out the window. It's sometimes we have to read into what they're saying. And so, you might have to ask a few more questions and say, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm wondering if you're asking me, is it safe here? Are you wondering, are we following the proper protocol to keep you and myself safe? You know what I mean? Like sometimes we might have to ask another question. Just don't go by what they said. We talk about a lot of this in all of our courses. What they say and what they mean might be two different things. And this is not the time that we want to start like, yeah, you're going to be safe here. And then the patient's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't schedule an appointment, because they think they asked the right question. But we didn't follow up with clarification. So I can see a lot of that confusion coming up, when we're talking to patients. So that's why it's really important that you get the team involved in about what you're doing, how you're going to be doing it, make them role play and walk through it, like how will it change the way that you're going to greet and things like that. But remind them, just like we do when we talk about phone skills, like what they say and what they mean isn't always the same thing. And it's our job to get that clarity from them. They don't think they have to know what questions to ask us about how safe it will be in your office. And they don't think it's their job to know what questions to ask us. We have to take the assumption of position that that's our job, and it's just like, we're ready to talk to you about these things. That's why I want you to start anticipating not only what questions can we get from people, okay, but what could be the underlying meaning of what they're saying. Right. Because they may say, is it safe to come to your office? The easy answer is yes. But really what they want to know is, what protocol are you following? You know, are you sterilizing this?
Right. What are you
Does that
doing to
get
keep
thrown
me
away?
safe?
Exactly. Like, I just touched this pencil. Did somebody else touch it before me? Is this the clean bin? Is this the dirty bin? You know, type of thing. So we have to remember in communication, what they say and what they mean might be two different things. And people are going to be rushed to get back to their jobs, you know, rushed to get kids settled, got a pile of work on their desk when they return to work. They're not going to be thinking about these things because that is our job. That is our job to think about these things for them. And so they're going to feel more comfortable. I always use that little rhyming phrase that you want to verify to clarify. They say something, but before we just give a fast answer, we want to make sure that we say, well, let me see if I understand you correctly. Are you wondering about whatever? You know? And so I like that technique. I like that technique where you verify what they've asked you first, because you want to make sure that you answer the right question. But what I like about it is that you could be totally wrong about what you thought they said or what they meant. But if you've given them the opportunity to clarify themselves, who do they like better? See, you answer the wrong question. You answer the wrong question, they get really upset and they get frustrated. But you give them the opportunity to clarify themselves, they love it. And so now you know that you're answering the question the right way. So as a part of your training, it's practicing what are the sterilization techniques that we're doing? What is the protocol that we follow? You know, refresh our own memories about what we do, because we've been doing it for so long, we probably forgot how safe it is to work here, you know, and what's new and how does it change their visit? When they come to our office, what are we going to be doing that's different? Along with that, you also want to check with your team about their availability to work extra hours, as well as if we're going to open up extra days, are they even available? How does this change their schedule? How does it change their home care? You know, again, we're all in this, but it all affects us in a personal way. And so we can't just assume they're all gung-ho and ready to go and can work on Saturdays and things like that. You gotta find out from the team. And so,
Larry, real quick, you brought up a really good point. You can't just be, everybody's gone for a long time and then show up and say, all right, we're ready to go back to work and have this plan that you haven't worked through with your team, because they're going to go, wait a second, I don't know enough. And so Larry's making a huge point. You got to build up this connection with your team while you're not back to work yet, which then brought up some questions. Well, do I have to pay them? Are they on unemployment? And all these sorts of questions too.
Yes, because obviously if they're, not to go off on a tangent, if you're bringing them back, once you get to the point where you recognize, okay, you're going to be coming back to work within 2 weeks, then I'm thinking you've got to start having these meetings with your team, because you've got to start to put your schedule together.
Yeah.
You know, and so
let me just back up a second, because one of the things I'm big about, and of course, I mean, I have a certain standard when it comes to training, but you know, most of us, and this is his life, I did the same thing as well. We tend to work on reactivity. We react to what happens and we just do it, or it's last minute. I'm not a big fan of last minute, but sometimes it happens. But there are two issues I want to go to, and then we'll come back to our panelists. Number one is this idea of educating. We have to make sure that we're constantly repeating and educating our patients and our team about safety and what we're doing. Okay, that just has to be ongoing. Like you're a politician, you just keep going on your talking points. You do the research. One thing that was very encouraging when we had our members call yesterday, it was pretty much unanimous. Every doctor said, as long as we have PPE, we feel, and the testing, we feel that we can go back to work and we can make sure patients are safe with certain changes. It was pretty clear, and that was inspired me. And the fact that I work with all of you, you know, we have thousands of dental practitioners, but I thought that was really cool because I didn't know that. And if I don't know that, right, that's your perspective, how do you think your patients don't even know that? And your team. So you have to say it. That's important. The other thing, I just want to take a quick little look here, and I want to talk about the importance of foundation. Just give me a second here. And because I keep asking what am I referencing and things like that. So this is just a preview of a login for All Star Dental Academy. And there are a couple of things I just want to show you here. So we created this course, Success in Adversity. It's just kind of an ad hoc course we created very quickly because it's really kind of building what we talk about in these discussions, where we talked about financial assistance issues, all that, unemployment, a lot of those questions. But and we have our members only meeting so this is more of a group coaching standpoint situation. But what I want to bring your attention to is what I put together called a training protocol. Okay. So in general, with All-Star, for those who follow us and our members know that we recommend just 20 minutes a week of training when you're in the office because you're busy. But we believe that you want to do consistently, 20 minutes a week, consistently adds up. Versus what we typically do is we do a few hours of training a year and that's it, seminar. But the key is consistency. But now we have free time. What do we do with this time? And so with the training protocol, I have two protocols. So three, actually. One is a dentist training protocol for dentists on the call. We have the MBA leadership course where every week you're going through a different module on leadership, mindset, planning, hiring, right? A lot of Ben Erickson material. And there's also certain other supplementary webinars to support you. So when you come back, you're improved as a leader. Now for the team, again, we're just recommending 20 minutes a week, but not now. Now we have the time. We want the team going in depth, 2 to 3 hours a week of training. Now, I'm not expecting that they're going to remember all this, but at least it's starting to build those synapses in their mind that when you get back to the office, you can go little by little, okay? But the reason I say foundation is so important is because, let me just show you here, and our foundational course being, one of our foundational courses being the Phone Success course, is we have to master rapport. What Larry's speaking to, I want to get past one fallacy that we're big fans of making sure it goes away, which is that if we give you some magic script, it's going to make things work. We're fans of verbiage, and we're going to continue to give you verbiage, but you have to have the foundations of rapport. So granted, the program does not talk yet. We'll create verbiage to speak to this, specifics about the coronavirus and these type of situations. But like Larry is saying, in terms of you have to have these skills, the rapport skills, to be able to look beyond what is said, right? Because we teach that it's not just what's said, the words, it's the tonality. It's understanding where the person's coming from, having the empathy. And then when you're able to then do that, and you have these training embedded in your team, you then can start to add on the different verbiage suggestions, okay? So what I was just, so I can take the screen away from here. So I was just demonstrating that we can have a different training protocol. Oh, I did forget to show, wait a second. There was the last one's called the operational protocol. That's where Larry and I talk about operationally what you could be doing now too. So there's training for you, dentist, and the team. There's operations. What am I doing operationally to take care of this time? What am I doing with patients? So there's things to be done. And we want to go back to this idea of important, but not urgent. So that the time that you are hearing from Larry and Robyn and Eric and all of our coaches and All-Star in more detail, and Heather, about the specific verbiage, I don't want you to think it's in a vacuum, meaning you need to be working on rapport skills. So of course, I'd love you who are not members in the call to be doing All-Star. But if you're doing it another way, if you're learning whether it's another system or whether you're using Tony Robbins, which, you know, we reference a lot. I was a Tony Robbins coach, but if you could be doing just, there's all of these classes and there's free stuff online on how to build rapport and how to train, but you need to be training. So whether it's us or something else, you should be having your team working on empathy skills, rapport skills, personal skills, so that we come back, like I think the coaches were saying, we're not like, who are you? You know, where have we been? And we cannot even just come back to the way it was, because you're going to have patients and other team members with an anxiety level like here, okay? Because the government isn't being very clear and direct. Everybody is not being clear on who knows what. And we have to be able to be properly prepared for that. But does that make sense? So I just want to be kind of a realist and a strategist, because look, it's not great. but you do the best you can with what you have, but you need to have, as a business leader, a process step by step. It isn't, I'm not here to burst your bubble. It isn't like I go watch a bunch of webinars and now I know what to do. It's got to be systematic, that you come to us, because I'm more, from a coach perspective, you come to us and then you work on it, right? Little by little. Okay. So anyways, that's just the continually educating, and having a clear foundation, making sure your team has foundation so you can start to work with that. And so what you're going to hear, I'll turn it over to the coaches, is what you hear here. Don't just in a vacuum. Talk to your team about it. Oh, Larry and Robyn and Eric said this. Let's role play this, right? For members on the call and those using the All-Star program, role playing, practicing rapport skills. I'm a patient. What will I be saying? I'm a nervous patient. Things like that. So, anyways, that's my seminar. I'll get off my what do they call that? What's the expression?
Your soapbox.
My soapbox.
Because you control the microphone.
I do. Well, no, you have the microphone too, but I can control Zoom, so I am like the Wizard of Oz, right? All right. So commentary from my peanut gallery. Go ahead.
Well, no, because what you're talking about leads right into the schedule. And when we return, what is that going to look like? And I think it's going to be different for every office. It's going to be individual. Some people are going to, and it's going to depend on the level of demand. My opinion is that there is some pent-up demand. There's always that initial rush, and we have to be prepared for it. And you have to look at how prepared are we going to be for things. Because I think, in our guidelines, we always talk about how if the office has been closed for an extended period of time, you should have some extra emergency time in the schedule. And I think you're going to need to have a lot more of that, because a lot of people who knew that you weren't open, but maybe they have something urgent going on, but not necessarily an emergency, those people are going to want to start calling in now because they know that you're back in the office. And so you're going to have to be prepared for that. And so you might look at your schedule and say, in my pre-blocking, I'm going to put a little bit more emergency time in there initially, maybe the first couple of days or maybe that first week, and maybe less secondary care time, for fillings and things like that. So look at your schedule, because I think the pre-blocking is going to be important. My sense is the bigger rush is going to be, this is just my sense of it right now, is that the bigger rush is going to be on the restorative side. And so some offices I've talked to, we've decided, why don't we start initially with the restorative side first and get that going and get the PPP and, the protection and how they're coming into the office, because that flow is slower than in hygiene, and then we're going to start hygiene after that. And then we're going to take a look at the demand to determine, we want to fill our days first. If we feel like there's a demand for more than what we can get done in a day, then we'll add on to those days, and then if that demand is strong, then we may consider having people come in on a Friday or a Saturday, something like that, because again, it's a scheduling issue. There's an overtime issue. And so we have to be cognizant of all of that and pay attention to it. So you might consider, it's not like all clear and you're open. It might be, that you're going to be getting the all clear in 2 weeks. So now we want to start our training. Some of you may have gotten your PPP loan. That has to be used within a certain amount of time after getting it. I thought maybe you had something to say there, Alex.
He was leaning way in there.
Right. I'm like, you might have gotten your PPP loan. So now you can start using those funds for training, where you talk about all these different protocols. But some of the things besides the phone skills and even the scheduling that I think you're going to need to remind everybody about is particularly your computer skills. What are some of the parts of the computer that you've been ignoring for treatment planning, for recall, for marketing, for following up on pending treatment and stuff like that we've always wanted to start using that. I think we're all good at using treatment codes, but most of us don't use the condition codes. And those things are going to become more and more important as time goes by. But my point is, this is a good time to do that kind of training, to implement that. People have been away from the dental office for a long time, and there's conditions going on in their mouth that they can see it. it's going to make more sense to them. So maybe practicing our photography skills and getting better at uploading digital photos, pulling up digital photos, having files of digital photos of specific conditions that we want to show people, you know, that would be a good thing. But I think that's a lot of good training that you can do right now while you're getting your schedule together and while, excuse me, you're reviewing your phone skills of how you're going to answer questions. The key there is, we know this, if somebody asks you a question and there's the slightest amount of hesitation in your response, that's all the patient needs to know. I knew you guys weren't up to snuff on this. Why we want to practice it is because we want to sound natural, we want to sound authentic, and we want to sound confident, you know? And so it's like, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm ready to give you an answer, and here it is. And so I think that those things are going to be really, really important. I think when you're looking at your schedule, we don't have all the guidance yet, but I do know that from a restorative standpoint, you've got a lot of treatment that was put off, plus there's a lot that's being built up. So I think when you're looking at your patients and who needs to be rescheduled, obviously people who have the most immediate needs. So make a definition so your staff understands that. If you have this, this, or that, we consider that something immediate, Ms. Jones, and the doctor has reserved time specifically for you to come in and get that taken care of, you know? Because if you don't take the time that we have for you right now, geez, I don't know when it'll be. When I look to see when the next available appointment is open, it's sometime down the road. But start with what are the most immediate needs. In your hygiene schedule, you might do the same thing. Obviously, somebody who is in periotherapy, that's immediate, and you haven't had an appointment in now over a month. So we have reserved time specifically for you so that you don't have to wait any longer to be treated. So what are the most immediate needs? If we're going to get some weird, maybe that's not the right word, but if we're going to get some very specific guidance on social distancing in the office, what does that mean about people coming and going? In hygiene, you might want to consider staggering your schedule. On the restorative side, everybody pretty much is staggered. But on the hygiene side, you might want to stagger. And you don't necessarily have to have patient 1 at the top of the hour and patient 2 at the bottom of the hour or something. It could just be 15 minutes, because that'll help out a lot when it comes towards lunch, and it'll help out a lot when we get towards the end of the day. You know what I mean? You might just say first patient at 8 o'clock and the second patient at 8:15, and then it goes every hour or every 15 minutes after the hour after that, but just kind of stagger those. If there's an issue of spacing when people come into the office. Otherwise, we've talked about people just sitting out in their cars. I think initially that will work. I don't know how long people are going to be okay with just waiting out in the parking lot. I think a lot of people are just going to forget, and walk into your office anyway. And so what do? Do we throw a cloak over them and push them off the balcony or something? We can't look startled, just like, oh, surprised to see you so soon. Haven't called you. But you might have to look at those issues. But again, when you're redoing the hygiene schedule, who are the patients who have the most immediate conditions that need to be treated? What are the most immediate restorative conditions that we were evaluating for these patients? And for that reason, we've reserved time to get you in now, as opposed to waiting until something becomes available later in the schedule. So we look at immediate needs first, then obviously the deferrable needs. I think a lot of dentists are familiar with this process. What conditions are going on that actually we knew that they needed to get done, but they could buy a little bit of time on it. Well, those are the very next people that we want to schedule. Hygiene side and restorative side. And then obviously anybody who's having something done that was optional, that after you've treated all those patients, now we'll get those patients in. The key verbiage that I want you to use, because you have this condition going on, we don't say, well, you have an immediate need or you have a deferrable or, just because that's optional. We wouldn't say it that way. We would say, because you have this tooth that is cracked, doctor recommends that this be seen as quickly as possible. And to make that happen, the doctor, the verbal skills here, the doctor has reserved specific time just for you to come in. I'm going to look to see when the next available appointment is open. Obviously, if the patient declines that appointment, it's like, Well, when I look to see when the next available appointment is open, you know, it's whatever. And then the patient will kind of decide, do I want to wait that long, or will I take the one that he's reserved for me? We know in most cases, people would rather come in sooner than later. They're going to take the time that you've reserved. So getting your schedule together, deciding on your pre-blocking. You know, you can alter your pre-blocks. It doesn't have to be, well, I think it's going to be for most of you all morning, obviously will be primary care. And then in the afternoon, you're probably going to have a little bit more emergency time than you typically have. And then your secondary care will be after that. So those are the things that I wanted to throw in there and kind of just open up the conversation from everybody else and see what other questions that they have. But I feel like if you're concerned about training, it's those phone skills and how to answer those questions. It's so important, as well as probably some computer things that you've always wanted to learn, but you kept putting it off. And photography skills now, I think is really going to help people. Let's just get good at this stuff and stop complaining that we never had time to do it.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Go ahead, Alex.
We go. Okay. Well, you have the bigger beard now. I mean, that's a mighty beard.
Until COVID's gone, this is going to keep going.
Wow, I'll be calling you Moses soon.
Yeah, my wife nixed the COVID beard thing.
But your hair is like getting taller.
I know. I haven't had a haircut in 6 weeks, so I'm just.
You guys just like showing off, huh? Like that, you know. So I am seeing some policy questions in the Q&A, and a lot of them are really very specific to your practice. And I don't want to get too off topic with it. If you go to allstardentalacademy.com/survival, we have some replays where we spend more time on questions like this. And there's also some other resources that may answer those questions. You also can email us. I think we have a contact form on the website, or you can email if you have one of our addresses. And what I'll do, if there's a specific question that wasn't answered, I can get it to one of our coaches to see if they can answer it pretty quickly. I just don't want to get too off topic, because for the most part, I mean, look, there's only a few. Man, we were on the call, we were having 30, 40. I mean, it was tons of questions coming through, and I'm so grateful that most of them are being answered. And I'd like to continue to build on what we're talking about today, is more on what we're doing. So today was kind of what we're doing with the downtime, what we're doing to get back to, and like I said, we want to get back to where we were, but we have to go even further. We have to be even more on par, because, like I said, just some review. We got to make sure we're educating the patients. We're educating the team, okay? In terms of that, and even before that, you have to do a gut check that you're confident that you can make them safe. That you have, and like I said, the vast majority of dentists believe that. Because again, there's some states like where Larry's at, where you can get a haircut, but you can't see the dentist. So we know that we're safer than going to the nail salon or the tattoo parlor, okay? So dentistry is one of the safest places you can go. And that here, like Larry was saying with the verbiage, that we don't just want to logically put out talking points. We have to feel where they're coming from. That's why the rapport skills are so important. What's underlying it? That they want to feel safe, and they want to know what protocols you're doing. In our members call yesterday, Heather, our VP of training, our phone skills instructor, she said at her chiropractor, she canceled her appointment because she didn't feel they were taking proper precautions, and the doctor was reactive. Oh, we are doing it. But it would have been good if she had on her website, here's what we're doing to make sure you're safe. Okay, so it needs to be on your website. It needs to be on your social media. You need to be calling patients, dentists, so your team, calling patients, and your team needs to know, here's what we're doing and here's why we're safe. We have
text messaging,
right? We have masks, we have face shields, right? We have, I know now there's filters in the office that can be done to suck things out. We're taking temperatures. We're, the virus out. Yeah. Okay. So there's
technical terms there.
Technical, yes. Yes. Vacuums. There you go.
Yes.
Vacuums. Yes. Okay. So anyways, the waiting room, how to optimize the waiting room. We're not going to have a waiting room. We're going to text you to come in. We're going to be making sure that when we roll it out, we're going to make sure that the elderly patients are going to be only coming in if it's an absolute emergency, right? So there are certain things that you can do. We were talking yesterday, one of our member dentists was saying, I'm not going to bring back my team that is over a certain age. So there's certain protocols you can do, but the point is you got to exude confidence. You got to exude that leadership and that safety. Okay. And then your team has to exude safety and support. Okay. These are huge issues.
If the team doesn't feel safe, the patient's not going to feel safe.
Correct. So it goes that way.
It has to go that way.
Doctor has to feel safe, has to communicate that. Team has to represent the doctor, and then the patients have to do that. And this can be something you can do right now.
We want no, that's why you have to practice it, because we want no hesitation in your response.
Correct.
And so you need to know what your system is before you can know your verbal skill too.
Right.
Well, everybody's going to say it a little bit differently. They're going to say it their way, but they have to have some practice doing that.
Yeah. I saw a doctor this week, and they were getting ready to send a letter out to all their patients, and it led with big changes, big concerns. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to tell you how to write your letter, but we're not going to throw out the word change or the word concern, because that's what people are going to focus on. You know, it's got to be, you're going to be so happy that we are exceeding the levels of expectation when it comes to CDC, OSHA, whatever you want to say. And our protocols are always above and beyond whatever the recommended is.
Yes.
Have you guys ever noticed you go to the physician and the physician doesn't even wear a mask? I'm like, you know, the dentist has always been on the forefront of how to deal with this sort of stuff, and we need to exude that. And there was a question about schedule earlier. I want to make sure we address it. You know, multiple hygienists, that sort of thing. Look, the average 4-day-a-week hygienist is going to see 110 patients a month. Okay, so if you have 4 days a week, it's 110 patients. There's another 110 waiting. You know, she's not going to see 220. You're not going to get to all of them. And if April was open, that means 6 months later, October is open. So you need to come up with a plan with your team on how you're going to expand your hours, because it can't just be this and expect to get all the patients back in quickly. And so your team, very specific to your team, has to decide what that is. Some hygienists aren't willing to work more. They work in other locations. You know, they can't do that, you know, adding a Friday or whatever it may be. So you may hire another hygienist temporarily. There's things that you're going to have to do. There was a question about, you know, how do we see multiple people at the same time? I have an office say one hygienist is going to start at 7:30, one's going to start at 8, so they don't have the same patients walking out to the front at the same time. They're going to stagger, so that way they're not decreasing our patients they see, but they're offsetting how people are coming in and going out, keeping the social distancing. The formula that I've been using, Larry, for the doctor, and I'll just throw out a number, you know, $60,000 a month doctor, lost 2 months, just his or her production. That's $120,000. And let's say best case scenario, we got 6 months left in this year to try to make that up. That's $20,000 a month. And you're working 15 days a month. It's like $1,250 additional per day.
Yeah.
That would be the goal. So you would expand your high production time by an hour, and you would decrease your low production time by an hour and elongate those appointments. Like you're saying, it's going to take longer to get in for those. We have a new daily goal for the rest of the year. And so the other question was, burnout. People are going to get burned out. We're not going to expand hours forever. The government just gave you some money. They're going to be paying for the overtime. They've been losing money being on unemployment. Let's go earn it. Have the government pay for the overtime.
Yeah.
Right, because that's a good way to spend that money. If you can't, because they haven't adjusted the timing issue, and it doesn't look like they are, but they could, because every night they change things. But so if you do have to pay overtime, the good news is it'll help you spend that PPP money.
Yes, in a shorter amount of time. Exactly. Because the people are getting funded now and saying, I can't even start to use it. Well, take the 8 weeks that you were given to spend money and spend it in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever that is, by expansion of hours. You'll still spend the money, but in a shorter amount of time. And if you don't, so what? You didn't spend it all. You spend some of it, and either you
and send it back, you know.
Send it back or keep it as a loan, whatever you decide to do at the end.
Excellent. Well, thank you, coaches. Thank you, everybody. I think we explained what we wanted to get today, which is the broader view of making sure that you are constantly communicating. So we saw doctor to team to patients and doctor to patients, but making sure you're always communicating through your marketing, that and that's the thing, that you're making it safe. And like Eric said, you're going beyond what OSHA is going to say. And you got to make sure that you continue to say this now. This isn't we figure it out when we get back. This has got to be, I was a little nice, okay, for the first couple of weeks. So we had to take care of unemployment and all this stuff, right? Because it was hello. But look, there are some that will be opening, some that might be longer, but we have to be proactive about this. We have to be proactive about this and making sure we continue to do that. And I assume a lot of you are, and if you aren't, like I said, I'm giving you the framework. Your marketing all has to have this on all of your marketing, your social media, your website. Your website does not have some article or some banner or something on social media saying this is what we're doing. Okay, then you're behind. Okay, your team needs to know this. You have to, and it will be an evolution. You got to keep, and you need to role play this with your team and your spouse and your friends until you get this right over and over again, and that you feel comfortable, right? And your team feels comfortable, like Larry was saying, answering these questions and answering the hidden question, what they're really getting at, and making sure you speak to that. And it doesn't matter whether it's next week or next month or 2 months or whatever, people are going to be scared, and you got to be able to be well trained to handle that. Foundation is rapport skills. So whether you're using All-Star or some other way of training and learning those skills, they're not obvious. They take some time and practicing with your team. You got to do that. Otherwise, you're behind the 8 ball. Okay. Now, the advantage for a lot of you who are listening are private practitioners. Actually, corporate dentistry is in a pickle. It's harder for them because it takes a lot longer for them to make changes. They're all over the states are dealing with so much logistical issues that you can implement training and this rapport type skills faster, because people are, and I think Larry, we were talking about this, is that lower price alternatives are going to have a hard time competing because they can't triple book and all these things and they can't charge too low because they're not going to make a profit with social distancing. So practices when you're doing this, if you're investing in you're doing all these protocols, make sure you're investing in terms of what's going to actually get people to come, which is your verbal skills, your empathy, your training. People are going to look for places like that. Right now, we see how banks have handled this. And guess what? The small banks have been handling this better than the big banks. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to see a huge defection from Wells Fargo and Bank of America to these small places.
Relationships.
Okay? Relationships. And guess what's going to happen too? If you do this right, everyone who's listening, you're going to start, maybe you won't see it in the next few quarters, but in the years to come, you will see a positive tornado coming your way of patients because you did it right. You were doing that. I have a member, Dennis, we heard yesterday, she's giving out toothbrushes and things and notifying people on all of her messaging and building the goodwill. Do that now, everybody. It's a good marketing tactic, and it's also good for the heart. It feels good too. Go. And I'll give everybody, Eric, Robyn, and Larry, last word, and then we'll.
Right. So wrong thing to do. Like I saw on a Facebook message board, my doctor's freaking out because the PPE expenses and wants to charge every patient $7 to $10 extra for this. And I was just like, no, on the message, because look, that's communicating A, we weren't doing it before, so now we're going to charge you. B, it says that, well, other people aren't charging, and so I'm going to go over there. You're giving people more friction. You want to remove friction from coming in to see. They need to feel safe. They need to have a relationship with you. You need to increase your fees by 3% or whatever it is across the board. I would say this, get with your team. For me, the 3 things that are interwoven is how you spend your government money. Unemployment or PPP will determine if you're paying people for your meetings, if you're delaying payment, whatever that is, right? Keep it on unemployment. Determining your OSHA and PPE standards for you. There's not going to be any recommendations that are going to come out right now from the CDC. These guys are going to hire some outside source to come in and tell them what to do before they can even tell you. So you're smart. You know what to do. Get those standards. Have it set up. Determine how much time that's going to take now for your schedule. Maybe your hour hygiene appointments is perfect as long as you're just doing a couple other things. And those other things don't take extra time, or you're removing something else to make time for that. And then fix your doctor schedule with changing your daily goal.
Excellent. Robyn?
Piggybacking on what Eric is saying, it's It's going to take some creative ingenuity. Things are not going to be exactly the same when you come back. So you have to really look at the bigger picture and then funnel it down for what makes sense for your practice. Re-emphasizing what Larry has said, this really is going to be most important with the verbal skills, not only for the schedule that you already have, that, you know, patients haven't disappeared from May, June, July yet, right? So having those conversations, getting comfortable, then when you notify the other ones that you had to take off the schedule in February, March, April, moving them forward, getting them taken care of, it is going to be just so important that your team, your doctors, everybody's all on the same page. And give yourself some grace that we are all figuring this out. You know, things are going to change, and what you decide today is really going to be based on the information you have today, and that may change tomorrow. So again, give yourself some grace.
Yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense.
Because anytime you change anything, you know, like you get a new update on your phone, everybody hates it. You know, you get the new update on your computer system. We always say, what for, how come, why can't we have whatever? So we have to remember, nobody enjoys change. Nobody really does. Some of us get used to it a little bit sooner. Some of us take a little bit longer. We have to be patient with one another, but give yourselves the time. Nobody learns anything while they're rushed. Nobody does. And so there's a balance between giving yourself enough time and too much time, you know, so that's why practicing, like now I hear a lot of talk about, you know, PPE and how are we going to follow OSHA and get appointments done and all that, and say, you're right, the uncertainty is going to drive you nuts. That's why you've got to get the team together while you can and practice it. Say, let's sterilize a room. Let's get in and out of whatever we need to get in and out of. Right now, we don't exactly know what those guidelines are. All I can say is it always takes longer when you're learning, and everybody speeds up once we get used to it.
Yeah.
You know, some of us were around during the AIDS scare when we actually had to start wearing masks and gloves. We never did any of that stuff before. And I remember then everybody thought, there's no way I could spray down a room. There's no way I could do this. There's no way I could change gloves and masks. And well, we did it. I remember after 9/11 when they started checking ID. Before then, they thought there's no way possible for you to check everyone's ID before they got onto a plane. We would never get one boarded. But guess what? We check everyone's ID now. You know, they said years ago, there's no way you could check every bag. Some of you were around then, but guess what? We got through it. At first, it was clunky. At first, it took a long time. But now that we're used to it, we get our ID out. We check our bags. We know what stuff can go in and what shouldn't, and we get through security pretty quick. So be patient with ourselves, and we've got to encourage each other that I understand that this creates stress. We're going to work with you. That's why this training time now is so important, where we're not actually seeing patients. So it may mean that we practice uploading a picture. We practice uploading a chart and putting in all the codes and the things that we want to do. Practice sterilization. See how long it takes. Time yourselves. And then talk about it at the end of the day before you go home. Okay, we got through this first day. How did we do? What should we, should we do tomorrow? So, you know, just give yourself the opportunity. Right now, what's driving us is the uncertainty, because nobody likes that. And I don't like it, because I'm like, I wish I had better answers for you sometimes, but I don't know exactly what the guidance is going to be. But as soon as we find out, we're going to start to implement it. We'll practice it. And I know, because I know our history, we've always been able to get through and overcome these things. We didn't like it. Some people are more vocal about it than others, but we just got to love those people a little bit more. That's all. And we know that they can get through it. We know they can.
And I think you can go to the principles, and just knowing that if I follow these principles, it always makes me feel better, is that is follow the process. It will all work out. I do what you're supposed to do regardless. And then, like Robyn was saying, have some, go easy on yourself, and like Larry said, the people around you. And that's it, one foot after the other, right? And, but we don't put our heads in the sand. We move forward. We do the best that we can do. And miraculously, things typically work out just fine.
Yeah,
right?
I have just one other comment about the phone skills is that a big part of our training is about talking to that new patient.
Yes.
And we don't want to forget about that, because I do believe that there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand for people who needed to go to the dentist and put it off, and then this happened, and now they're waiting. So those new patient calls.
And they're looking for a place that is safe.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. We can't be throwing out what works because like Eric's been saying, there's going to be pent-up demand, and Larry, and we have to be prepared for that. We come back and we don't have those skills. Those are not trained. Now's when you get back is not a good time to be starting the training.
Right. No, those insurance questions are going to be there.
Everything's going to be there, and you're this. Let me explain the problem. Your team is back. They had a bit of a time off. They're trying to get situated, and now they're getting left and right all these different questions and things. They're going to be burnt out. That's going to cause a burnout. So get the training now so they can. It makes it a lot easier then. I just want to point out, though, I know a lot of people love your verbiage, Larry. Larry, for those who aren't members, he's our scheduling instructor. He does about half of the programs and at All Stars. So if you like hearing Larry, he's part of it. If you don't like hearing him, I'll just forget I said he's part of the program.
No, but new patients
listen to
are
Heather
important,
instead.
but it also affects your schedule as well, that you want to keep that balance going, because we want to keep the schedule full after this little surge, because that will wear out. That will diminish. And so we want to make sure that phone is answered correctly, that new patients are welcomed into your practice, and so you want to put time in your schedule to see them as well. So don't forget about that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point that we're making assumptions that are which are, catch-22, because we could be wrong, meaning we're thinking, we're going to come back. There's not going to be a lot of new patients. It will be a desert. Yeah, but what if it's not? What if you're getting a lot of demand and you're not prepared for it? Okay, you just lost a lot of market share. So Larry made a really good point. You got to be prepared. And this isn't hard. This is little by little. We're big fans of little by little. If you do it now, it's like we learned in school. You do your homework little by little versus the night before. It's a lot easier. Okay? So we're trying to coach you through this. We're on you. We'll see you next week. We'll pick up on this. I'll be getting a new topic out and a new webinar for next week, but I'm thinking I want to build on it. I'm thinking, unless these coaches they tell me otherwise, and maybe get into a little more verbiage of what we can do when people are calling and things like that might be of help. Certainly feel free to reach out to us. Let us know what you'd like to hear more of, and we'll put that together for you. So Larry Guzzardo, Eric Vickery, Robyn Reis, thank you so much for being a part of our call today. And until next time, go out there and
be an all-star.
An all-star.
It's like that.
One day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been 6 years.
Be safe.